Hello friends, today we're going to be discussing where is real estate cheap right now. Have you asked yourself recently, where is real estate actually cheap at this moment? Well, by the end of this video, you'll be well informed of the top regions that have cheaper real estate. You're going to understand why these areas are maybe priced lower than other areas. And I'm also going to show you how to approach investing in these markets where real estate is cheap. So what makes a real estate market become notably affordable? And are these low-cost regions worthy of investing, or are there things that you need to be aware of and dangers you need to avoid? Well, I'm going to answer these questions by first jumping in and identifying what markets have cheap real estate right now. Next, I want to explain some of the very important elements to consider when considering buying cheap real estate. And finally, I'm going to cover some of the historical information that will help you as an investor as you begin to look for and purchase cheap real estate. If you're ready to dive in, let's go. If you're in the market right now to purchase real estate, either as a homeowner or as a real estate investor, you might be pretty overwhelmed with the prices that you're seeing in most markets. And you're not alone. Matter of fact, I'm pretty overwhelmed with how expensive real estate is in some of the markets that I've traditionally really liked investing into. And because of this, it's caused myself and many other investors to start looking in other areas in the United States where prices aren't pretty outrageous. So where am I looking? Where should you be looking? Well, right now, I'm a fan of the Midwest. Now, when I say this, I'm looking at all of the states in the Midwest, but specifically, I've been looking in Illinois, outside of St. Louis. I've been looking in areas just south of Chicago, whether it's Decatur. I've been looking in areas of even Wisconsin, outside of Indianapolis, and then some places in Ohio. So most of these places are in the Midwest. And the crazy thing is I'm finding suitable living homes that have people in there renting them below $70,000. The sweet spot I'm looking for is between $40,000 and $70,000, but definitely below $100,000. And that's kind of the game right now, at least what I'm looking for when I deploy some of the strategies of cheap real estate. I want to try and find something that doesn't require a lot of rehab and work to get the home up to par. And here's something else that I found as I've started to investigate and look for cheap real estate. As I've put filters on Zillow to help me find some of these properties, right? And I put filters on there on price, on bedrooms. I want to have single family homes, not land, lots, condos, townhomes. But I've started to find pockets of cheap real estate in other states that traditionally I thought wouldn't have any, like Tennessee, Texas, Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia. So there are pockets that have cheaper real estate. You've just got to do the research and find them. So can you find cheap real estate in lots of different states? The answer is yes. But there's a key component when I look for cheap real estate, and that is this. Whenever I find a property that I want to put an offer on, I'm going to put an offer that's typically 25, 30, 40% lower than asking price. And the reason I'm doing this is because the strategies that I use with cheap real estate, they can only be done if the price of the home that I buy it at is below what people are asking for it or what the appraised value might be. And so because of that, I'm not getting a ton of responses. I'm not getting a ton of offers accepted. So I probably right now have a ratio of one accepted offer for about 15 offers. That's not a very good ratio, but that's what I'm looking for. At that point, I really don't care. So now that you know where to look and what I'm doing and how I'm putting offers out there, what are some of the things you should be aware of when looking for cheap real estate? The number one thing that should be on everybody's mind is location. Location is super important in real estate. If you're going out and you're buying a cheap piece of property in the middle of nowhere, there's a reason it's really cheap, because it's in the rural part of the United States. And I'm not saying that can't be a good investment, right? If you can find the right tenant, the right future buyer, whatever that might be, it can all work out. But I'm typically seeing a location where I find properties that are within an hour distance of bigger metropolitan areas like St. Louis or Chicago or Indianapolis. If you can find properties that are within an hour proximity to these major metropolitan areas, that's going to serve you a lot better than super rural areas that might have cheap real estate. And also with location, you just want to find an area that's not dying, right? If a lot of people are moving out of the area or there's no job opportunities, there's zero growth, and I'm not saying it has to be full of growth, as long as tons of people aren't leaving the area and there's still an opportunity to live and provide for your family, that's going to be a decent location. Now, how do you find out about certain areas? How do you get answers to some of these questions? Like, is it flourishing? Is it growing? Is there opportunities? Is there jobs? I love going to realtors and in finding out and asking them questions because they know the area better than anybody, especially about those moving in and moving out. So I'm not afraid to engage and utilize realtors as a real estate investor. And if you don't want to do that, you could obviously do your own Google research, right? But a lot of times realtors have more information than I can get off of Google. You know, the second factor that comes into play is crime. I've seen some really good looking homes, but when I've done additional research, I found that they're in a very crime-ridden area, and that is something that's going to be hard to deploy any of my strategies. But typically, I just don't want to own a home where there's a lot of crime. That could be a big turnoff for potential investors. It is for me. And so you've got to do your research. There's a lot of websites out there that will tell you what the area is and what type of crimes happen in that area. But just doing any type of research on these crime sites or Google research is going to allow you to understand if the area has a lot of crime or not. And when it comes to crime, you're going to have to do your due diligence because sometimes these crime websites don't get it exactly right? They might be comparing these cities against each other. So crime in one area, even though it might be 2 or 3 crimes, and another area only had 1 or 0 crimes, it might rate it so much lower, but compared to like a major city, it's not that bad. So you've got to look at multiple websites and make sure that you're comparing data to see if it all adds up. So finally, what can history teach us about investing and purchasing cheap real estate? Well, the first thing we got to understand is real estate goes through cycles. And a real estate cycle typically has 4 stages to that cycle. And here are those 4 stages. You have recovery, expansion, hypersupply, and then recession. So understanding each of those phases and how it affects the housing market is crucial for you as a real estate investor. And obviously, if we're diving into those stages, recovery is one that's just coming out of maybe a recession and you're starting to see things pull together where supplies is starting to normalize, prices are starting to go up a little bit. It seems to be on that normal growth rate and appreciation rate. And then as you move into expansion, this is where you see prices really start to go up. You see new housing starts. You see all the economic data that's saying that things are growing in the real estate market. And then obviously right after that, when these people start to build new homes, there becomes more supply on the market, or as people move out of homes into cities or apartments, all of a sudden you have what's called hypersupply. What happens when there's a large supply of homes on the market? You're right, prices go down. They have to go down because the only differentiating factor between this house and that house has to be price. And so for order for the supply to move and to be bought up, prices are going to have to go down to meet demand. Because if there's a lot of supply on the market, a buyer has a huge choice of which home to buy, and these homes are not going to move unless price starts to meet the demand. And then after that, because prices start coming down, you see a recession. Now, how long do these real estate cycles even last? Well, research will tell you that it takes anywhere between 10 to 18 years. And that's not a perfect number because there's so many factors that go into affecting a real estate cycle. And those could be things like asset classes, geography, government assistance. So if you're looking at asset classes, single family homes, especially inexpensive single family homes, might be able to weather a recession than maybe a home that's $400,000 or $500,000. The amount that a larger, more expensive home can move in a recession is so much greater than a less expensive single family home. Another asset class, multifamily, might be one that isn't as affected in some of these real estate cycles because no matter what happens, people have to have a place to live. And if they can't live in a home, they're going to live in an apartment. So some of these multifamily units, apartment buildings, can weather the storms better than other asset classes. They say that those that don't understand history are doomed to repeat it. If we look at the last major recession we had in the real estate market, 2007, 2008, we had a pretty big bubble burst as far as real estate. And we saw all these stages come to fruition and saw prices really come down and hypersupply recession on the market. But we also saw the recovery and the expansion. And where are we right now? I think that's the big question. Some might say that we're getting to that part where we're getting to oversupply. Even though there's not a lot of inventory on the market, inventory is starting to creep up and interest rates are higher, which is bringing down demand to buy homes. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next few years as far as the real estate market's concerned. Understanding the historical cycles we've been through in real estate and where we are right now is really crucial as a real estate investor. And I'd be interested in your feedback. What have you seen as far as real estate cycles? Have you lived through a couple of them? What have you seen? Comment. Let's engage in a dialogue. And as always, just for stopping by and watching the video, I've got a free gift for you. Just click on the link below, aaronsfreetraining.com. It is a short-term rental calculator where you put in the purchase price, the income, the expenses, and it's going to spit out to you whether it is a good deal or not. It does all the work for you and just lets you know whether it's something you should be interested in or not. And once again, thanks for stopping by. Have an amazing day.